My name is Molly, and I'm 28 years old. The day everything changed started like any other Saturday. It was my grandmother's 75th birthday, and my husband Derek was driving us to her house in Lake Oswego. I sat in the passenger seat holding a carefully wrapped gift on my lap, an album filled with photos of Grandma Helen and me from the time I was 5 until now. I couldn't wait to see her face when she opened it. But when Derek pulled up to the curb in front of her house, he didn't park in the driveway. He stopped right at the gate. Then I heard the click of the door locks. Before I could ask what was happening, he turned to me with a look I'd never seen before. "Something's wrong," he said. "Don't get out yet. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you want to hear how this birthday party turned into something I never could have imagined, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end, because what I discovered that day changed my entire life. Let me take you back to how everything seemed before that moment. Derek and I had been married for 3 years. We met at a coffee shop in Portland on a rainy Tuesday morning. I was working on a design project, and he accidentally bumped my table, spilling my latte everywhere. He apologized profusely, bought me another drink, and we ended up talking for 2 hours. He was a software engineer with a steady job at a tech startup. I worked as a freelance graphic designer from home. Our life together was comfortable, easy, almost predictable in the best way possible. Derek was the kind of husband who remembered anniversaries, who brought home my favorite Thai takeout on Friday nights, who kissed my forehead every morning before leaving for work. We had a small apartment in the suburbs with a balcony where I grew herbs in terracotta pots. On weekends, we'd cook together, trying new recipes we found online. He'd chop vegetables while I handled the stove, and we'd laugh when things didn't turn out quite right. I trusted him completely. When he said he loved me, I believed him without question. When he told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him, I felt the same way about him. My relationship with Grandma Helen was the foundation of my world. She wasn't just my grandmother. She was my mother, my father, my everything. When I was 15, my parents died in a car accident on Interstate 5. It was winter. The roads were icy, and a truck lost control. I still remember the police officers at our door, their faces heavy with the news that would shatter my childhood. After that, Grandma Helen took me in without hesitation. She lived in a beautiful craftsman-style house in Lake Oswego, about 30 minutes from where Derek and I lived now. The house had a wraparound porch, tall windows that let in streams of morning light, and a garden full of roses that she tended every spring. She taught me everything: how to make her famous apple pie with the lattice crust, how to prune rose bushes without getting scratched, how to balance a checkbook and file taxes. But more than that, she taught me how to keep living after loss. She never tried to replace my parents. Instead, she honored their memory while helping me build a new life. Every night for the first year after they died, she'd sit on the edge of my bed and read to me until I fell asleep, even though I was too old for bedtime stories. She went to every single one of my high school events, cheering louder than any other parent in the crowd. When Derek and I got engaged, Grandma Helen cried happy tears. She loved him instantly. At our small wedding in her backyard, she danced with him and told him he was now her grandson. Derek seemed to adore her too. He'd help her with yard work when we visited, fixing broken fence posts and cleaning out gutters. She'd send us home with containers of homemade soup and cookies. I thought we were building the kind of family I'd lost when my parents died. I thought Derek understood how precious that was. I visited Grandma Helen at least twice a month, usually on Sundays. I'd bring groceries and we'd cook together, filling her kitchen with the smell of garlic and herbs. She'd tell me stories about my grandfather who passed away before I was born, about how they met at a USO dance during his leave from the Navy. She'd show me old photographs pointing out relatives I'd never met. The house was filled with memories, every room holding pieces of our family history. I loved that place not because of its value, but because it was home in a way nowhere else could ever be. So when Derek suggested throwing a big birthday party for Grandma Helen's 75th, I was touched by his thoughtfulness. It was a Monday evening, and we were washing dishes after dinner. "What if we did something really special for your grandma's birthday this year?" he said, scrubbing a plate. "She's turning 75. That's a big milestone. We should invite everyone, make it a real celebration." I turned to him, surprised and pleased. "That's such a sweet idea," I replied. "She'd love that." Derek smiled at me, that warm smile I'd fallen in love with. "Let's make it perfect," he said. "She deserves it." Over the next 2 weeks, Derek took charge of the planning. He said I had too many work deadlines coming up and he wanted to handle everything. I was grateful. He made phone calls, sent invitations, ordered a cake from the bakery Grandma Helen loved. Whenever I asked if he needed help, he'd wave me off. "I've got it covered, babe," he'd say. "You just focus on your projects. I'll take care of Grandma's party." I thought it was incredibly sweet. I spent my time creating something special for her, a leather-bound album filled with photos from throughout our lives together. Pictures of me as a baby in her arms, photos from my high school graduation where she stood proudly beside me, snapshots from my wedding day where she wore that lavender dress she'd bought special for the occasion. The morning of the party arrived bright and clear. It was late October, and the trees were turning brilliant shades of orange and gold. Derek woke up early, which was unusual for a Saturday. He made coffee and brought me a cup in bed. "Today's going to be perfect," he said, kissing my forehead. I smiled up at him, thinking how lucky I was to have such a caring husband. We had a leisurely breakfast together, scrambled eggs and toast. Derek kept checking his phone, which I assumed was him coordinating last-minute party details. He seemed distracted, but I thought he was just focused on making sure everything went smoothly. We left the house around 2 in the afternoon. The party was set to start at 3, and Derek wanted to get there early to help set up. I held the wrapped album on my lap as he drove, imagining Grandma Helen's reaction when she opened it. The drive to Lake Oswego was beautiful that time of year. We passed neighborhoods where kids played in piles of fallen leaves. The sky was that particular shade of October blue, crisp and clear. Derek had the radio on low, playing soft jazz. I glanced over at him a few times. His jaw was tight, hands gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, just focused on the road." But there was something in his voice, a tension I couldn't quite place. As we got closer to Grandma Helen's neighborhood, Derek became quieter. The streets were familiar to me, lined with mature oak trees and well-kept houses. I could feel the excitement building in my chest. I couldn't wait to see my grandmother, to hug her and wish her happy birthday, to watch her flip through the album I'd made. When we turned onto her street, I saw cars parked all along the curb. "Wow." I said lots of people came. "That's wonderful." Derek didn't respond. He slowed the car as we approached her house. The craftsman stood there as it always had, its porch decorated with pumpkins and mums. Lights glowed warmly in the windows. I could see shadows of people moving inside. Everything looked festive and welcoming. So why did Derek suddenly look so grim? He pulled the car to a stop at the curb right in front of the white picket fence that bordered the property, but he didn't pull into the driveway where there was still space. He put the car in park and turned off the engine. I reached for the door handle, ready to get out and go inside. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable click of the automatic locks engaging. I froze, my hand still on the handle. "Derek, what are you doing?" I asked, turning to look at him. He was staring straight ahead at the house. his profile illuminated by the afternoon sun. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. "Don't get out yet." I stared at my husband in complete confusion. "What do you mean something's wrong?" I asked. "Everyone's already here. The party's starting. We need to go inside." Derek finally turned to look at me, and his expression was strange, almost pained. "Just wait, Molly. I need to explain something." My heart started to beat faster. Was there an emergency? Was Grandma Helen okay? "Is it Grandma?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "Is she sick? Did something happen?" No, Derek said quickly. "She's fine. She's inside." "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Why are you acting so weird?" Derek took a deep breath and turned back to look at the house. "My mom's in there," he said. "I know that," I replied. "You invited her." "She's family." He shook his head slightly. "No, I mean, she's in there with some other people. They have papers, legal documents." I felt my confusion deepen. Papers? What kind of papers? What are you talking about? Derek's hands were still on the steering wheel, knuckles white. "They want you to sign something," he said, "about your grandma's estate." The word estate hit me like cold water. Estate. "Derek, my grandma's not dead. She's healthy. She's 75 and still gardens every day." "What estate?" Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I know, but apparently she updated her will recently. She left everything to you. The house, her savings, everything." I blinked, processing this information. "Okay," I said slowly. "So, that's her decision to make. She can leave her things to whoever she wants." Derek was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My mom thinks you should share it. With the family." The words hung in the air between us. Share it. With the family. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What family?" I asked carefully. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. "Well, me and my mom. We're family now, too." I sat back in my seat, the gift box on my lap, suddenly feeling heavy. "Your mother thinks I should share my grandmother's estate with her." Derek nodded. "She thinks it's only fair. I mean, we're all family, and you and I are married. What's yours is mine, right? That phrase, what's yours is mine." It sounded so ugly coming out of his mouth in this context. "Wait," I said, my mind racing. "Back up. How does your mother even know about my grandmother's will?" "Did Grandma tell her?" Derek looked uncomfortable. "Not exactly. I think she heard it from someone. Maybe one of the relatives. Word gets around." "And when did you find out about this?" I pressed. He hesitated. "A couple weeks ago. My mom mentioned it. Said we should talk to your grandma about it. 2 weeks ago, right around the time he volunteered to plan this whole party, the pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made me feel sick. So let me get this straight," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Your mother found out my grandmother left me her estate. She told you, and then you suddenly decided to throw this big party. Is that right?" Derek's silence was answer enough. I felt like I'd been punched. "Oh my God," I whispered. "This whole thing, this party, it was never about celebrating Grandma's birthday, was it?" Derek reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "It's not like that, Molly. I genuinely wanted to do something nice for her. But yes, my mom thought it would be a good opportunity to discuss things, as a family." To discuss things, I repeated, my voice rising. "You mean to pressure her, to manipulate her into changing her will?" "No," Derek said firmly. "Just to talk, to make sure everyone's treated fairly." I stared at him, this man I thought I knew, and wondered who I was really looking at. "Derek," I said slowly, "why didn't you tell me about this before? Why didn't you mention any of this until right now with me locked in the car outside my grandmother's house?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly stressed. "Because I knew you'd react like this. I knew you'd get upset." "Of course I'm upset," I said loudly. "Your mother is trying to steal my grandmother's property and you're helping her." "I'm not helping anyone," Derek shot back. "That's why I'm warning you. I wanted you to know what you're walking into so you can be prepared. Don't sign anything without reading it carefully. That's all I'm saying." I took several deep breaths, trying to calm the anger and hurt swirling inside me. So there are actual documents in there. Someone brought papers for my grandmother to sign. Today. At her birthday party. Derek nodded reluctantly. "My mom hired a lawyer. He's inside." "A lawyer," I said flatly, "at a 75th birthday party. Do you hear how insane that sounds?" Derek looked miserable. I tried to talk her out of it. I told her it was a bad idea, but she insisted. She said your grandma would be surrounded by family in a good mood, and it would be the perfect time to handle it. I felt nauseous. The perfect time to handle it. Like my grandmother was a business transaction instead of a person. Instead of the woman who raised me, who loved me unconditionally, who deserved to enjoy her birthday without being ambushed by greedy relatives. "And you went along with this," I said to Derek. "You helped organize it. You lied to me for 2 weeks." "I didn't lie," he protested weakly. "I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing I snapped." We sat in tense silence for a moment. I could hear laughter from inside the house, could see more people arriving, walking up the path to the front door with gifts and smiles. They had no idea what was really happening. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked quietly. Derek sighed. "My mom's been talking about it for a few months, ever since she found out about the will. She kept saying it wasn't fair for you to get everything when I'm family too now. And what did you say when she said that?" I asked. Derek didn't answer. That told me everything. My hands were shaking. The man sitting next to me, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd vowed to be my partner through everything, had been plotting behind my back for months. He'd let his mother convince him that he was entitled to my grandmother's property that wasn't even mine yet, that belonged to a woman who was very much alive and healthy. I felt betrayed in a way I couldn't fully articulate. It wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about trust. It was about loyalty. It was about understanding what family really meant. "Are you on her side or mine?" I asked Derek directly. He looked pained. "There are no sides, Molly. We're all family." "That's not an answer," I said. "Are you standing with your mother in trying to pressure my grandmother, or are you standing with me?" Derek struggled to respond. "I want what's fair for everyone," he finally said. "That's what I'm trying to do. Make sure everyone's treated fairly." I shook my head slowly. The only person who gets to decide what's fair is my grandmother. It's her property, her life, her choice. And if you can't understand that, then we have a serious problem. Derek reached for the door lock. "Come on," he said. "Let's just go inside. You can see for yourself that it's not as bad as you're thinking." I grabbed his arm. "Promise me something," I said intensely. "Promise me you will not pressure my grandmother. Promise me you'll have my back in there." Derek met my eyes. "I promise," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I didn't believe him, but I also couldn't sit in this car forever. I needed to see my grandmother. I needed to make sure she was okay. So I let him unlock the doors. I stepped out onto the sidewalk clutching my gift and walked toward the house with a sense of dread I'd never felt before about visiting my grandmother's home. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was off. The house was full of people, maybe 20 or so, but the atmosphere felt wrong. Instead of the warm, welcoming energy of a birthday celebration, there was tension in the air. Conversations stopped as I entered. Heads turned. Eyes followed me. Derek's mother, Linda, stood near the fireplace, and she immediately came toward us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Molly, dear," she said, arms outstretched. "So glad you could make it." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but I could hear the false note in it. Linda pulled me into a hug that felt more like a calculation than affection. She'd always been polite to me, but we'd never been close. She was one of those women who measured everything in terms of status and money, who bragged about her son's tech job and their nice house in West Lynn. I'd always found her a bit shallow, but Derek loved her, so I made an effort. Now, standing in my grandmother's living room, I saw her in a different light. Her smile was sharp. Her eyes assessed me like I was an opponent in a game I hadn't known we were playing. I pulled back from the hug and looked around. There were relatives from Derek's side. I recognized his aunt and uncle, a couple of cousins. There were also a few of Grandma Helen's friends from church neighbors she'd known for years, and a handful of distant relatives from my mother's side of the family. But the person I most wanted to see was nowhere visible. "Where's my grandma?" I asked Linda. "Oh, she's resting upstairs," Linda said dismissively. All this excitement tired her out. "You know how it is at her age." I frowned. That didn't sound like Grandma Helen at all. She loved entertaining. She lived for gatherings like this, and she'd never rest during her own party. She'd be in the kitchen making sure everyone had enough to eat, or in the living room chatting with guests. Something was definitely wrong. "I need to see her," I said, moving toward the staircase. Linda's hand shot out to stop me. "Oh, let her rest a bit longer, dear. Come have some food first. There's someone I want you to meet." She gestured to a man standing near the dining room table. He was probably in his mid-50s, wearing an expensive-looking suit and holding a leather briefcase. He had the polished appearance of someone who worked in law or finance. Linda led me over to him, her hand on my elbow in a grip that was just a little too tight. "Molly, this is Mr. Patterson. He's our family attorney." Mr. Patterson extended his hand with a professional smile. "Pleased to meet you, Ms. Molly. I've heard a lot about you. Our family attorney." Linda had said our family, but Mr. Patterson wasn't my attorney. I'd never seen him before in my life. I shook his hand briefly, my skin crawling. "Family attorney," I repeated. "I didn't realize we needed one today." Mr. Patterson chuckled in that smooth way lawyers do. "Oh, I'm just here to help with some paperwork. Standard procedure." "Nothing to worry about." Standard procedure. Those words again, the same ones Derek had used in the car. I felt anger starting to bubble up inside me, hot and insistent. Standard for what exactly, I asked, keeping my voice level. Linda jumped in before Mr. Patterson could answer. "Well, dear, since your grandmother recently updated her will, we thought it would be prudent to have everything properly documented. You know, to avoid any confusion down the line." I looked at her directly. Confusion about what my grandmother made her wishes clear. "Where's the confusion?" Linda's smile tightened. "Well, some family members feel that the current arrangement isn't quite equitable. We're all family now, after all. Derek married into your family and you married into ours. We thought perhaps a more balanced distribution would be appropriate." The words hit me like a slap. A more balanced distribution. They wanted me to give up my grandmother's estate to split it with people who had no connection to her, no history with her, no claim to anything she'd built. and they were doing this here now on her birthday in her own home. I set my gift box down on the nearest table with more force than necessary. "Where's Derek?" I asked, looking around. He'd disappeared into the crowd after we came inside. Linda waved vaguely. "Oh, he's around somewhere. But Molly, let's talk about this reasonably." Reasonably. There was nothing reasonable about what was happening. I took a step closer to Linda, and she actually backed up slightly. "Linda," I said, my voice quiet but hard. "My grandmother is upstairs. This is her house. This is her birthday party. And you brought a lawyer to pressure her into changing her will. Do I have that right?" Linda's face flushed. "I'm not pressuring anyone. I'm simply suggesting that fair is fair. Derek is your husband. He's family. He deserves to be included. Deserves, I repeated. He deserves my grandmother's property. Property she earned through a lifetime of work. Property she chose to leave to me, her granddaughter, the person she raised." Linda raised her chin defensively. "I'm just thinking of my son's future. Your future together. Wouldn't it be nice to have the resources to buy a bigger house to start a family? You could use that money." I felt sick. So this was about money after all, about what Derek and Linda could gain. Not about my grandmother's wishes or well-being, not about respecting her autonomy, just greed, plain and simple. I didn't bother responding to Linda. Instead, I turned and headed for the staircase. This time, when Linda tried to stop me, I shrugged off her hand. "I'm going to see my grandmother," I said firmly, "and nobody is going to stop me." I climbed the stairs quickly, my heart pounding. Behind me, I could hear Linda saying something to Mr. Patterson in a low voice, but I didn't care. I needed to see Grandma Helen. I needed to make sure she was okay. I reached the second floor and walked down the familiar hallway to her bedroom at the end. The door was closed. I knocked gently. "Grandma." "It's Molly. Can I come in?" There was a pause. Then I heard her voice weaker than usual. "Molly." "Is that you, sweetheart?" "Yes, it's me," I said, opening the door. The sight that greeted me broke my heart a little. Grandma Helen was sitting in the armchair by the window, the one she always sat in to read. But she wasn't reading now. She was just sitting there looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen her look before. She wore a pretty blue dress, her silver hair was neatly styled, and she had her pearls on. But her face was drawn, her eyes sad. I rushed over and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. "Happy birthday, Grandma. Are you okay? Why are you up here?" She squeezed my hands, and I felt them trembling slightly. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so glad you're here." I needed a break from all that noise downstairs. I studied her face. She didn't look tired. She looked upset, stressed, maybe even frightened. "What happened?" I asked gently. "Did someone say something to you?" "Grandma." Helen sighed deeply and looked out the window at her garden below. "Molly, sweetheart, there's something I need to tell you. And I need you to listen without getting too upset." "All right." I nodded, though my stomach was already knotting with anxiety. She patted my hand. "About 3 months ago, I went to the doctor for my regular checkup. They found some irregularities with my heart. Nothing immediately dangerous, but something to watch. They put me on some medication, told me to take it easy, monitor my blood pressure." I felt my breath catch. "Grandma, why didn't you tell me?" She smiled sadly. "Because I knew you'd worry. And it's nothing serious, really. I feel fine most days. But it made me think about the future, about making sure everything was in order. So I called my lawyer and I updated my will. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of, honey. After everything we've been through together after raising you, watching you grow up. You're the most important person in my life. This house, my savings, everything I have, I want it to go to you." Tears pricked my eyes. "Grandma, I don't care about any of that. I just want you to be healthy and happy." "I know, sweetheart," she said. "That's exactly why you're the one who deserves it. You love me for who I am, not what I have. But apparently not everyone sees it that way." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Linda called me. About a month ago. She said she'd heard about the will from someone, I'm not sure who. She was very insistent that I should reconsider. She said it wasn't fair to exclude Derek now that he's family." I felt my anger rising again. "What did you tell her?" Grandma Helen's jaw set with the stubbornness I knew well. "I told her it was none of her business. This is my house, my money, and I'll leave it to whomever I please." She didn't like that answer. She kept calling, kept pushing. Then she said she wanted to organize this birthday party for me, and I thought maybe she was trying to make amends, to be kind. Her voice broke slightly. "I didn't realize it was a trap." "A trap. That's exactly what it was." I squeezed her hands. "Did anyone ask you to sign anything today?" She nodded. "Before you got here, Linda cornered me in the kitchen. She had that lawyer man with her. They had papers, Molly. An amendment to my will. They said it would just split everything 3 ways between you, Derek, and Linda. They said it was the fair thing to do, that it would prevent family conflict later. They kept pushing and pushing. I felt tears of rage and frustration building. "And what did you say?" Grandma Helen lifted her chin. "I said absolutely not. I told them to leave me alone." That's when Linda suggested I come upstairs to rest, to think it over. But really, I think she just wanted me out of the way so she could work on you when you arrived. My grandmother looked at me with fierce love in her eyes. "Molly, I'm not changing my will. That house down the street where you grew up with your parents, I sold that after they died because I couldn't bear to keep it. I used that money to help pay for your college. This house, this is our house now. Yours and mine. It's filled with our memories. I won't let anyone take that away from us." I hugged her tightly, careful not to squeeze too hard. "You don't have to change anything, Grandma. I won't let them pressure you. I promise." But even as I said it, I was realizing something horrible. Derek knew about this. He'd known for weeks, maybe months. He'd helped organize this ambush, and he'd lied to me about all of it. The man I'd married, the man I'd trusted with my heart, had betrayed both me and my grandmother for money. The hurt of that realization was almost physical. "Grandma," I asked quietly, "did Derek know about Linda's plans? Did he talk to you about the will?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Linda mentioned that she'd discussed it with him. She said Derek agreed that he should be included in the inheritance. Said he thought it was only fair since you two are building a life together." Each word was like a knife. So he'd been in on it from the beginning. All those sweet gestures, all that talk about making Grandma's birthday special, it had all been manipulation. A setup. I stood up, wiping my eyes. "Stay here, Grandma. Don't come downstairs unless you want to. And don't sign anything. I'll handle this." She looked worried. "Molly, what are you going to do?" I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring smile, though inside I was shaking with fury. "I'm going to make sure nobody takes advantage of you ever again." I kissed her forehead and left the room, closing the door gently behind me. As I walked back down the hallway toward the stairs, I could feel my emotions crystallizing into something hard and clear. I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry, and I was done being manipulated. I descended the stairs slowly, my mind working through everything I'd just learned. When I reached the bottom, I paused to survey the room. The party continued around me. People chatted in small groups, eating finger foods from plates, drinking punch from crystal cups. To an outsider, it would look like a normal birthday celebration. But I could see the truth now. This wasn't a party. It was a stage for manipulation. Linda spotted me immediately and made her way over Mr. Patterson, trailing behind her. She had that fake concerned expression plastered on her face. "How is she, dear? Is Helen feeling better?" I looked at Linda, really looked at her, and wondered how I'd never seen this side of her before. The calculation in her eyes, the greed hiding behind the smile. "She's fine," I said flatly. "Just tired of being harassed in her own home." Linda's expression flickered with annoyance before smoothing back into false concern. "Harassed, Molly. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? We're just trying to have a conversation about the future." "A conversation," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it? Bringing a lawyer to a birthday party, pressuring a 75-year-old woman to sign legal documents. That's just a conversation to you." Several nearby people stopped talking and turned to listen. Linda noticed and lowered her voice. "Let's discuss this privately," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. "No," I said loudly enough that more people could hear. "I think we should discuss it right here in front of everyone." Mr. Patterson stepped forward, trying to play mediator. "Ms. Molly, perhaps we could all calm down and approach this rationally. There are documents I'd be happy to review with you. Very standard estate planning materials. Nobody's being forced to do anything." I turned to him. "Who hired you, Mr. Patterson?" "Who's paying your fee today?" He adjusted his tie uncomfortably. "That's confidential information between attorney and client." "I see," I said. "So Linda hired you." "This is her attorney, not a family attorney. Not my grandmother's attorney. He's here representing Linda's interests, not Grandma Helen's. Is that correct?" Mr. Patterson opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence was answer enough. I looked around the room at all the faces watching us. Some of Derek's relatives looked uncomfortable. Some of Grandma's friends looked confused. I spoke clearly, making sure everyone could hear. "Let me explain what's happening here. My grandmother recently updated her will to leave her estate to me, her granddaughter, the person she raised after my parents died. Some people," I looked pointedly at Linda, "think that's unfair. They think my husband Derek should get a share, and apparently so should his mother. Even though neither of them has any legal or moral claim to my grandmother's property." Linda's face flushed red. "That's not fair, Molly. Derek is your husband. What's yours should be his too. That's how marriage works." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marriage is about love and partnership, Linda, not about scheming to get your hands on your spouse's inheritance. And just to be clear, it's not even my inheritance yet. My grandmother is alive and healthy. This isn't about planning ahead. This is about greed." Linda's voice rose. "How dare you? I'm thinking of my son's future. Your future together." I took a step closer to her, and she actually backed up. "Where is your son, by the way? Where's Derek?" I looked around the room. Derek had been standing near the back, partially hidden behind a group of people, but now he had no choice but to step forward. Everyone's attention turned to him. His face was pale, his expression miserable. I walked over to him, and the crowd parted to let me through. "Tell me something, Derek," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "When did you know about your mother's plan?" Derek swallowed hard. "Molly, can we talk about this outside?" "No," I said firmly. "Answer the question. When did you know?" He looked around at all the watching faces, then back at me. "My mom mentioned it a few weeks ago. She said Grandma was leaving everything to you, and she thought it would be good if we talked about including me." A few weeks ago, I repeated, right around the time you volunteered to plan this party, right around the time you took over all the arrangements and kept me out of the loop. Derek, did you organize this party specifically so your mother could pressure my grandmother into changing her will? He tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. It wasn't like that, he said weakly. I genuinely wanted to celebrate her birthday. I know, but my mom thought it would be a good opportunity to discuss things, all of us together as a family. As a family, I echoed. Derek, you lied to me for weeks. You plotted behind my back. You helped your mother ambush my grandmother in her own home on her birthday. Does that sound like family to you? Derek's face crumpled. I didn't mean for it to go this way. I thought we could all just talk reasonably and work something out. Work something out, I said, my voice shaking now. Derek, this is my grandmother's house. She earned it. She chose to leave it to me. There's nothing to work out. The only person who gets to decide what happens to her property is her. And she already decided. Derek looked down at his shoes. I know, but Mom said that legally since we're married I'd have a claim anyway. Community property and all that. That stopped me cold. Community property. I turned to Mr. Patterson. Is that true? Would Derek have any legal claim to an inheritance I received from my grandmother? Mr. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. In Oregon, inheritance is generally considered separate property if it's left specifically to one spouse. However, if the funds are commingled with marital assets, it could become more complicated. So no, I pressed. Unless I choose to share it, Derek has no automatic right to my grandmother's estate. Mr. Patterson nodded reluctantly. That's correct. I turned back to Derek, feeling something break inside my chest. So you knew you had no legal right to it, but you thought you could manipulate me or manipulate my grandmother into giving it to you anyway. Derek's eyes filled with tears. I love you, Molly. This isn't about the money. Then what is it about? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like it's about money. You and your mother are trying to steal from my grandmother. Linda pushed forward angrily. We're not stealing anything. We're trying to ensure fair treatment for our family. Derek has been good to your grandmother. He deserves something for that. I whirled on her. Derek deserves something for being a decent person to an elderly woman. That's not how family works, Linda. You don't keep score. You don't calculate what you can get from someone, and you certainly don't ambush them at their own birthday party with legal documents. Linda's voice turned shrill. You're so self-righteous, Molly, acting like you're better than everyone. But you manipulated her too, playing the poor orphan, making her feel sorry for you. I felt my hands clench into fists at my sides. My parents died, Linda. I didn't play anything. My grandmother took me in because she loved me. Because that's what real family does. They don't abandon you when things get hard, and they don't try to profit off you when things get better. The room had gone completely silent. Everyone was staring at us. Then Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all take a step back and cool down. These are emotional matters, and I think some space would be beneficial. No, I said. I don't need space. I need everyone here to understand something. I pulled out my phone. For the past few minutes, I've been recording this conversation. I have Linda admitting she hired this lawyer. I have Derek admitting he knew about the plan. I have clear evidence of attempted elder manipulation. Linda's eyes went wide. You can't record people without their permission. Actually, I said in Oregon, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. And I consent. So this recording is perfectly legal. And if anyone tries to pressure my grandmother again, I will take it straight to the police and to Adult Protective Services. Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You wouldn't dare!" "Try me," I said coldly. Then I addressed the room. "I'm calling the police. Not to press charges, but to have them document what happened here today. I want an official record that my grandmother was pressured and harassed." Mr. Patterson grabbed his briefcase. "I'm leaving. This has become highly inappropriate." "Good idea," I said. "Please don't come back." He practically ran for the door. Linda stood there red-faced and furious. "You're going to regret this, Molly. You're tearing this family apart." I shook my head. "No, Linda. You did that when you decided your son's wife's inheritance was more important than basic human decency." I pulled up the non-emergency police number on my phone and hit dial. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. I spoke to the police dispatcher, explaining calmly that I needed an officer to document an attempted elder exploitation situation. While I was on the phone, some of the party guests began quietly leaving. A few of Grandma Helen's church friends came over to me and squeezed my hand supportively. One older woman whispered, "Good for you, dear. Helen's lucky to have you." That small kindness brought tears to my eyes. Linda stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, radiating fury. She kept trying to get Derek to leave with her, but he stayed rooted to his spot, staring at me with a mixture of guilt and desperation. Some of Derek's relatives gathered their things and headed out, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. I didn't care. Let them go. Let them tell their version of the story. I knew the truth and I had proof. While we waited for the police, I called Grandma Helen's actual attorney, the one who'd helped her write her will. His name was Thomas Brennan, and he'd been handling her legal matters for over 20 years. I had his number saved in my phone from when Grandma had given me her important contacts list just in case. He answered on the third ring. "Mr. Brennan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is Molly Chen Helen's granddaughter. I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but we have a situation." I explained quickly what had happened. Mr. Brennan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said in a grave voice, "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Don't let anyone pressure Helen into signing anything. If they've already prepared documents, I want to see them." "Thank you," I said, relief flooding through me. He was coming. We'd have proper legal representation, someone who actually had Grandma's best interests at heart. About 25 minutes after I'd called, 2 police officers arrived. They were both professional and kind, introducing themselves as Officer Martinez and Officer Chang. I invited them in and gave them a clear, factual account of what had happened. Grandma Helen came downstairs looking worried but determined. She confirmed everything I'd said. She told them about Linda's repeated phone calls about being cornered in her kitchen earlier today, about the pressure to sign documents she didn't want to sign. Officer Martinez took detailed notes. "Ma'am," he said to Grandma Helen, "have you felt threatened or coerced?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I've made my wishes clear about my estate, and I've been repeatedly pressured to change them. I'm 75 years old, and I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions. I don't appreciate being treated like I'm incompetent." Officer Chang turned to Linda. "Ma'am, did you bring legal documents to this residence today with the intention of having Mrs. Helen sign them?" Linda lifted her chin defiantly. "I brought a suggested amendment to her will, yes, for her own good and for family harmony. That's not a crime." Officer Chang made a note. "Did Mrs. Helen request this amendment?" "No," Linda admitted, "but it's in everyone's best interest." Officer Martinez looked at her seriously. "Ma'am, attempting to pressure or coerce an elderly person into changing their will can be considered elder abuse under Oregon law. We're going to file a report about today's incident." If there are any further attempts to contact Mrs. Helen regarding her estate without her explicit permission, she can file for a restraining order." Linda turned pale. "This is ridiculous. I'm her family." "Not legally," I said quietly. "You're not related to my grandmother by blood or marriage. Derek is my husband, but that doesn't make him her heir unless she chooses to make him one, and she's chosen not to." The officers finished their report and gave Grandma Helen a card with information about elder advocacy services. They advised her to keep records of any further contact from Linda and to call them if she felt unsafe. After they left, there was a heavy silence in the house. Most of the guests had gone. Only a handful remained, including 2 of Grandma's closest friends who'd stayed to support her. Then Mr. Brennan arrived carrying his own briefcase. He was a distinguished-looking man in his late 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. "Helen," he said warmly, hugging my grandmother. I came as fast as I could. She hugged him back gratefully. "Thank you, Thomas." He turned to me. "You must be Molly. Helen speaks of you constantly." Then he looked at Linda and Derek with considerably less warmth. "And you must be the relatives who think they know better than my client about her own affairs." Linda bristled. "We were just trying to help." Mr. Brennan held up a hand. "I've heard the situation. Let me be absolutely clear. Mrs. Helen's will is valid, properly executed, and entirely her own choice. Any attempt to pressure her into changing it could result not only in legal consequences, but could also be grounds for challenging any changes made under duress. In other words, if you somehow convinced her to sign something today, I could have it invalidated and you could face prosecution. Is that clear enough?" Linda said nothing, but her face was scarlet. Mr. Brennan turned to Grandma Helen. "Would you like these people to leave your home?" Grandma Helen nodded. "Yes, I want them to go, and I don't want to see or hear from them again unless they're prepared to apologize genuinely." Mr. Brennan gestured toward the door. "You heard the lady. Please leave." Linda grabbed her purse. "Fine. But don't come crying to us when you need help, Helen. When you're old and alone and have no one." I stepped between Linda and my grandmother. "She has me. She'll never be alone. And she certainly doesn't need people like you in her life." Linda stormed toward the door. "Derek, come on. We're leaving." But Derek didn't move immediately. He was looking at me with such sadness, such regret. "Molly," he said softly, "can we talk? Please?" I felt my anger waver for just a moment, replaced by the pain of betrayal. "Not now," I said. "Maybe not ever. But Derek, you need to understand something. You didn't just betray me today. You betrayed a vulnerable woman who welcomed you into her family with open arms. You chose money over integrity, over love, over everything I thought we stood for." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I just wanted us to be secure, to have a good future." "We already had that," I said, my own voice breaking. "We had each other. We had trust. We had love. And you threw it all away for something that was never yours to begin with." Linda's voice came from the doorway, sharp and impatient. "Derek now." Derek looked at me one more time, opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it. He turned and walked out. I heard Linda's car start outside, heard them drive away. Then the house fell into silence. Grandma Helen sank into her favorite armchair. "Mr. Brennan sat across from her, already making notes about the day's events for his records. Her 2 friends went into the kitchen to start cleaning up the remnants of the party that never really happened. I stood in the middle of the living room, shaking. Everything had changed in the span of a few hours. My marriage was effectively over. My trust in the man I'd loved was shattered. But I'd protected my grandmother. I'd stood up to people who tried to take advantage of her, and in doing so, I'd found a strength I didn't know I had. Grandma Helen held out her hand to me. "Come here, sweetheart." I went to her and knelt beside her chair just as I had upstairs earlier. She stroked my hair gently. "You were so brave today," she said. "So strong." "I'm not feeling very strong," I admitted, finally letting the tears fall. "I feel like everything just fell apart." She cupped my face in her weathered hands. "Sometimes things have to fall apart so better things can come together. You did the right thing, Molly. The hard thing. And I'm so proud of you." We sat together as the afternoon faded into evening. Mr. Brennan assured us that everything was documented properly and that Linda would face serious consequences if she tried anything again. He also suggested that Grandma Helen might want to add some additional legal protections to her will, and she agreed. As he was leaving, he shook my hand. "Your grandmother chose wisely when she chose you," he said. "She's lucky to have you. I felt lucky to have her too. Even after everything that had happened, even with my heart broken and my marriage likely over, I had her. And that meant I wasn't alone." The next few weeks passed in a haze of difficult conversations and painful decisions. I moved out of the apartment I shared with Derek and back into my old room at Grandma Helen's house. Derek called me repeatedly, sent long text messages apologizing and begging for another chance. But every time I thought about forgiving him, I remembered that moment when he'd locked me in the car when he'd known what was waiting inside and had still let me walk into that trap. I remembered how he'd stood by while his mother harassed my grandmother, how he'd put potential money ahead of our relationship, ahead of basic decency. I hired a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Wu, who'd been recommended by Mr. Brennan. She explained that since we'd only been married 3 years and had kept our finances mostly separate, the divorce should be relatively straightforward. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, she told me, so we don't need to prove wrongdoing. But given the circumstances around your grandmother's estate, we'll make sure it's crystal clear that it's your separate property. I nodded, grateful for her clarity and efficiency. Derek tried to contest some things at first, claiming he deserved a share of our joint savings and some furniture we'd bought together. But when Patricia sent him copies of the police report from Grandma's birthday and threatened to make his attempted inheritance grab part of the public divorce record, he backed down quickly. He didn't want that following him, especially not at his job where reputation mattered. Within 6 weeks, we'd reached a settlement. I kept my car, my design equipment, and my separate bank accounts. He kept his car, his tech gadgets, and the furniture. We split our tiny savings account down the middle. By mid-December, just 2 months after that disastrous birthday party, I was officially divorced. Linda sent me one email during this period, a long rambling message that alternated between angry accusations and attempts at guilt-tripping. She claimed I'd ruined her son's life, destroyed his happiness, and deprived him of financial security he deserved. She said I was selfish and ungrateful. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. I also blocked her email address, her phone number, and all her social media accounts. I had no interest in maintaining any connection to that woman. Mr. Brennan had sent her a formal cease and desist letter regarding any contact with Grandma Helen, and apparently she'd actually listened. My grandmother reported no further calls or visits. During this time, I threw myself into work. Being a freelance designer meant I could set my own hours and work from anywhere, which was perfect since I was staying at Grandma's house. I took on extra projects, working late into the night, sometimes designing logos and websites and marketing materials for small businesses. The work kept my mind busy, kept me from dwelling too much on the pain. And slowly, very slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version of myself that had been married to Derek, but someone older, wiser, more careful. Grandma Helen was my rock during this period. She made sure I ate regular meals, dragged me out for walks in her garden, even when it was cold and rainy. She didn't push me to talk about my feelings, but she was always there when I needed to. Some evenings we'd sit together in her living room, me on the couch with my laptop, her in her chair with a book, just keeping each other company. She'd been through her own losses, her own heartbreaks. She understood that healing takes time. I also reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. I called my college roommate Amy, who I hadn't spoken to properly in over a year. When I told her everything that had happened, she was shocked and furious on my behalf. "That's horrible, Molly," she said. "I never liked Derek that much anyway. He always seemed a little too focused on appearances, too concerned with status." "I wish I'd seen it then," I said. She was kind about it. "Love makes us blind sometimes, but you saw the truth when it mattered. That's what counts." Amy invited me to her place for Thanksgiving, but I declined. I wanted to spend it quietly with Grandma Helen. We made a small turkey, just the two of us, and all her traditional side dishes. We watched old movies and ate pie in our pajamas. It was simple and peaceful and exactly what I needed. That night, as I was helping clean up the kitchen, Grandma said something I've never forgotten. "You know, Molly, losing someone who wasn't right for you isn't really a loss. It's a liberation. You're free now to find someone who deserves you, or to just be happy on your own. Either way, you're free." By January, 6 months after the birthday party, I was in a much better place emotionally. I'd moved into a small apartment of my own, a one-bedroom place just 15 minutes from Grandma Helen's house. It wasn't fancy, but it had good light for my design work and a tiny balcony where I could grow herbs again. I decorated it slowly, choosing things I actually liked, instead of compromising with someone else's taste. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall was my choice. It felt empowering. My freelance business was thriving. Word of mouth had brought me several new clients, and I was making more money than I had while married. I'd been holding myself back, I realized, turning down projects that would have required evening work because Derek wanted me home for dinner. Now I could work whatever hours suited me. I could take on ambitious projects. I could push myself creatively. I joined a local yoga class and met some wonderful women who became friends. I started going to a book club that met at the library once a month. I was building a life that was entirely mine. Grandma Helen remained healthy and active. Her heart medication was working well, and her doctor was pleased with her progress. She kept up her garden even in winter, planning what she'd plant in spring. I visited her at least twice a week, often more. We'd cook together, watch her favorite shows, play cards. Those times with her were precious to me in a way they'd never quite been before. I'd almost lost the chance to protect her, almost let my trust in Derek blind me to what was happening. But I'd found my strength in time, and our relationship was stronger than ever. One Saturday in March, almost 6 months after my divorce was finalized, I ran into Derek at the grocery store. It was completely by chance. I was in the produce section picking out apples when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Molly." I turned, and there he was, looking older, somehow tired. "Hi, Derek," I said calmly. "How are you?" He seemed surprised by my composure. "I'm okay. Working a lot." "You?" "Same," I said. "Work's been good." There was an awkward pause. Then he said, "I heard you got your own place." "Yeah, I did," I replied. "It's nice. Small but perfect for me." He nodded, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Molly, I know I don't have the right to ask, but are you happy?" I considered the question. Was I happy? Not in the way I'd been happy before when I believed my marriage was solid and my future was certain, but in a different way, a deeper way. Yes, I said. I am. I'm building a life I'm proud of. I'm taking care of my grandmother. I'm doing work I love. So yeah, I'm happy. He smiled, but it was sad. I'm glad. You deserve that. He paused. I'm sorry, Molly, for everything. I know I ruined what we had. I know it's too late to fix it. But I am sorry. I looked at this man I'd once loved, once married, once thought I'd spend my life with, and I realized I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a kind of distant sadness for what might have been if he'd been different, if we'd been different. I appreciate that, I said. I hope you find what you're looking for, Derek. I hope you figure out what really matters. He nodded. You too. Take care of yourself. You too, I said. Then I turned back to the apples and he walked away. When I looked back a moment later, he was gone, and I felt okay. No tears, no rage, just acceptance. It was over, and that was okay. Spring came to Oregon with an explosion of color. Grandma Helen's rose garden burst into bloom, more beautiful than ever. Pink and red and yellow roses covered the trellises, their perfume filling the air. I spent a Sunday in late April helping her prune and weed. We worked side by side in comfortable silence, the sun warm on our backs. At one point, she stood up, stretching her back, and smiled at me. You know, I've been thinking, she said, about what I asked, pulling up a stubborn dandelion. About legacy, she said. About what we leave behind. Not just houses and money, but the important things. Values, love, strength. I sat back on my heels, looking up at her. What brought this on? She shrugged. I'm 76 now. Can't help but think about these things. She came over and sat on the garden bench, patting the spot beside her. I joined her, pulling off my gardening gloves. When I updated my will, she said I did it because I wanted to make sure you were taken care of financially. But what happened at my birthday party taught me something. The real inheritance I'm giving you isn't this house or my savings. It's the lesson about standing up for what's right, about protecting the people you love, about not letting anyone take advantage of you. I felt tears prick my eyes. You taught me that long before the party, Grandma. Maybe she said taking my hand, but you taught me that day that the lessons took root. You were strong when it mattered. You didn't back down. You protected me even though it cost you your marriage. That's the kind of person I raised you to be, and I couldn't be prouder. We sat together in the garden, surrounded by the roses she'd tended for decades, and I felt a profound sense of peace. Not because everything had worked out perfectly. It hadn't. My marriage had ended. I'd had to start over at 28, rebuilding my life from scratch. But I'd done it with integrity, with strength, with love. I want to tell you something I said. After everything that happened after Derek and Linda, and the whole mess I had people ask me if I regretted marrying him, if I wished I'd never met him. And you know what? I don't regret it. Because that experience taught me what I won't accept. It taught me my own value. It showed me that I'm strong enough to walk away when I need to. I'd rather have learned that at 28 than at 58. Grandma Helen squeezed my hand. That's wisdom, sweetheart. Real wisdom. Not many people your age have it. As summer approached, I got an unexpected phone call. It was from Derek's Aunt Margaret, one of the relatives who'd been at the birthday party. I almost didn't answer when I saw the unfamiliar number, but something made me pick up. Hello, Molly. This is Margaret Hoffman, Derek's aunt. Do you remember me? Of course, I said, carefully. What can I do for you? She sighed. I wanted to apologize for not speaking up that day at your grandmother's party. for not telling Linda she was out of line. I was shocked by the whole thing, and I should have supported you. I didn't know what to say. I've been thinking about it for months, Margaret continued. The way Linda acted, the way Derek went along with it. It was wrong. Completely wrong. And I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family agreed with what they did. Several of us were appalled. I felt a lump form in my throat. Thank you for saying that I managed. It means more than you know. She paused. I also wanted you to know that Derek is seeing a therapist now, working through some things, trying to understand why he made the choices he did. Linda is furious about it, thinks therapy is nonsense, but he's going anyway. I don't know what to say, I told her honestly. I'm glad he's getting help, but it doesn't change what happened. I know, Margaret said, and I'm not asking you to forgive him or take him back. I just thought you'd want to know that he's trying to be better, that maybe some good will come from all this pain. Maybe I said. After we hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about that conversation. I didn't want Derek back. That ship had sailed and I'd made peace with it. But the idea that he might actually grow from this, might become a better person, was oddly comforting. Maybe it meant the whole terrible experience wasn't entirely pointless. By the time my 29th birthday rolled around in August, almost a full year after Grandma's disastrous party, I felt like a completely different person than I'd been a year before. I was stronger, more independent, more certain of my values. I knew what I wanted and what I wouldn't tolerate. Grandma Helen threw me a small birthday dinner at her house, just the two of us, and a couple of my close friends. It was simple and lovely, full of laughter and good food. As we ate cake on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and gold, I felt genuinely happy. Not the naive happiness of before, but something deeper. Contentment, gratitude, peace. One of my friends asked me if I was dating anyone. I laughed and said no, I was focusing on myself for now. Maybe someday I'd open my heart to someone new. But I was in no rush. I'd learned that being alone was better than being with the wrong person, that my own company was enough, that I didn't need someone else to complete me. I was already complete. Grandma Helen raised her glass. To Molly she said, "Who knows her worth? Who stands her ground? Who protects the people she loves? May this year bring you everything you deserve." We all clinked glasses, and I felt tears of happiness sting my eyes. Looking back now, I can see the whole experience clearly. The betrayal hurt. The divorce was painful. Starting over was hard. But those challenges revealed who I truly was. They burned away the parts of me that were too trusting, too willing to ignore red flags, too afraid of conflict. What remained was stronger, more resilient, more authentically me. I'd learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you most. That love alone isn't enough without respect and integrity. That you can't build a life with someone who values money over loyalty, who'll sacrifice your well-being for their own gain. But I also learned that I was capable of far more than I knew. That I could stand up to bullies even when my voice shook. That I could protect vulnerable people even when it cost me. That I could rebuild my life even when it felt shattered. Those lessons were worth more than any inheritance could ever be. They were the real gift my grandmother gave me, not through her will, but through her example of dignity and strength. And now I carry those lessons forward into whatever comes next. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter about what happened, if I harbor resentment toward Derek or Linda. The truth is, I don't. Bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. I refuse to carry that toxicity. Instead, I've chosen to see the experience as a gift of clarity. It showed me who people really were when their true interests were at stake. It revealed character in a way that years of ordinary life never would have. and it freed me from a marriage that was built on a shaky foundation. Grandma Helen is now 77 and still going strong. Her health is stable. Her garden flourishes. She volunteers at the library twice a week and has an active social life with her church friends. I see her constantly, and our relationship is richer than ever. We talk about everything from world events to family memories to my hopes for the future. She's my best friend, my mentor, my family. I know that someday I'll lose her. That's the nature of life, but I don't dwell on it. Instead, I treasure every moment we have together. As for me, my design business continues to grow. I've started specializing in branding for small businesses owned by women, and it's deeply fulfilling work. I love helping other women build something of their own, create something they're proud of. I've made new friends through work and hobbies. I've learned to be content with my own company. I've discovered that independence isn't loneliness, it's freedom. I can make decisions without consulting anyone. I can change my plans on a whim. I can spend money on what matters to me without justifying it to someone else. It's liberating. I did eventually hear through mutual acquaintances that Derek remarried about 8 months after our divorce. His new wife comes from a wealthy family. I felt no jealousy when I heard that news, only a kind of sad understanding. He'd shown me who he was, what he valued. I hoped his new wife knew what she was getting into. I hoped he'd learned and grown. But mostly I just wished them well from a distance and moved on with my life. That chapter was closed. The book of my life had many more pages to fill. The house that Grandma Helen will someday leave me still stands on its quiet street in Lake Oswego. But I've realized something important. The house itself isn't what matters. What matters is that it represents a lifetime of love, of sacrifice, of family. It's the place where I learned to bake pies and tend roses, where I healed after losing my parents, where I discovered my own strength. That house is filled with memories that no amount of money could buy and no legal document could transfer. And that's what Derek and Linda never understood. They saw dollar signs where I saw home. If I could go back to that Saturday when Derek locked the car doors and said something was wrong, would I change anything? I don't think so. Because that moment, as painful as it was, set me on a path to becoming the person I was meant to be. It forced me to choose between maintaining a comfortable lie and facing a difficult truth. It made me stand up and fight for what was right. And in doing so, it showed me that I was capable of far more than I'd ever imagined. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually redirections. They're the universe's way of saying, not this way, try another path. My marriage ending felt like a catastrophe at the time. But now I can see it was a liberation. I was freed from a relationship that would have slowly eroded my sense of self. I was released from a family that saw me as a resource to exploit rather than a person to cherish. I was given a second chance to build a life that truly reflected my values, and I took that chance with both hands. Today, as I sit in my small apartment with my laptop working on a logo design for a client who's starting her own bakery, I feel genuinely content. The afternoon sun streams through my window. Jazz plays softly from my speaker. My phone sits nearby, and I know if I need anything, I can call Grandma Helen and she'll be there. I have friends who support me. I have work that challenges and fulfills me. I have a life that's entirely my own, and that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. The experience taught me that you can't control other people's choices. You can't make someone value you the way you deserve to be valued. You can't force someone to have integrity or loyalty. All you can control is your own response, your own choices, your own character. And when you stand firm in your values, when you refuse to compromise your principles for comfort or convenience, You discover a kind of strength that can't be shaken. That's the real inheritance my grandmother gave me. Not a house or money, but an unshakable sense of self-worth. To anyone who's experienced betrayal by someone they loved, I want you to know this. It gets better. The pain doesn't last forever. You're stronger than you think. You can rebuild. You can start over. You can create a life that's even better than what you lost. Because you'll create it consciously, intentionally, with full awareness of what you want and what you deserve. You'll build it on a foundation of self-respect rather than people-pleasing. And that foundation will hold through whatever storms come. I think about the woman I was on that October Saturday, sitting in the car outside my grandmother's house, confused and hurt, not yet understanding the full scope of what was happening. I wish I could go back and hug her. Tell her she's about to face something hard, but that she'll survive it. That she'll come out the other side stronger and wiser and more herself than ever before. But I can't go back. All I can do is honor that woman by living fully now, by appreciating the lessons she learned, by carrying forward the strength she discovered. Grandma Helen often quotes Maya Angelou saying, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Derek showed me who he was that day. Linda showed me too, and I believed them. I didn't make excuses. I didn't try to rationalize or minimize. I saw the truth clearly, and I acted on it. That clarity, painful as it was, saved me from years of deeper hurt down the line. If I'd ignored the warning signs, if I'd let them pressure Grandma Helen, if I'd chosen my marriage over my integrity, I'd be living with regret now. Instead, I'm living with peace. The roses in Grandma's garden bloom every spring without fail. They've weathered storms and harsh winters, and they always come back. That's what resilience looks like. That's what survival looks like. You bend in the wind, you lose some petals, you get pruned back. But your roots hold strong, and when the season is right, you bloom again. More beautiful than before because you've survived the winter. I'm blooming now in my own way, in my own time, and it feels like coming home to myself. So what's the lesson in all this? What's the takeaway from a birthday party that turned into a battleground, from a marriage that crumbled under the weight of greed, from a painful year of rebuilding and recovery? I think the lesson is this. Your worth isn't determined by who loves you or who values you. It's determined by how you love and value yourself. When you know your worth, when you stand firm in your principles, when you refuse to be diminished or exploited, you become unshakable. People will come and go from your life. Some will betray you. Some will disappoint you. But if you hold on to your integrity, your compassion, your strength, you'll always have yourself. And that's the only thing you really need. I've learned that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about who shows up for you when things get hard. It's about who protects you instead of exploiting you. It's about who celebrates your successes and comforts your sorrows. By that definition, Grandma Helen is my family. My real friends are my family. The clients who trust me with their dreams are family. Derek and Linda, despite their legal connections to me, were never really family. They were just people who saw an opportunity and tried to take advantage. And I'm grateful I saw that truth before it was too late. Have you ever had to make a choice between what's easy and what's right? Have you stood your ground even when it cost you something precious? Have you walked away from someone you loved because staying would mean losing yourself? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're strong enough to stand up for themselves, that they deserve respect and loyalty, that their worth isn't negotiable. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was long, and I appreciate you staying with me through all of it. I hope it gave you something to think about. Maybe even something to hold on to when you face your own difficult moments. Remember, you're capable of more than you know. You're stronger than you think. And you deserve people in your life who see your value and honor it. Don't settle for anything less. Protect the people you love. Stand up for what's right. And never ever let anyone make you feel guilty for knowing your worth. I'll leave you with this final thought. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. But when you find the courage to walk away, you realize you were never alone. You always had yourself. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Take care of yourselves out there. Be kind to each other. And know that no matter what storms you're weathering right now, spring always comes eventually. The roses always bloom again. You will too.